So now we will be starting on kind of the second half of today's program. And we will be doing that by listening to David here in a few minutes. So workplaces of today become more and more complex, and they heavily rely on brilliant, skilled employees that think for themselves, are creative, and perform brilliantly. And that really challenges our traditional ideas about leaders. So if you want people to think for themselves, don't do it for them and then tell them what to do. They'll kind of stop thinking. And this is exactly what David will tell us about, what he did. We'll be listening to his fascinating story about how he took a US Navy submarine from being the worst performing sub to being the best, and maybe even more fascinating, kept it there for long after he left. So he did something that lasted and was not depending on he being there. He created a whole submarine of leaders that substituted this traditional command and control management with David's framework of what he calls leader-leader, and created a whole team of passionate and engaged people that did really well, right? And this is exactly what we need. It's this type of leadership we need when we start working with the agile mindset, right? The whole idea about the Scrum teams is that they have all the needed skills on board in the team, and they know what to do by having the product owner being part of the team. So a traditional leader that would start telling them what to do would just be a disturbance to the team. They don't need that. What they do need, however, is a leader that creates an environment. And by environment, we kind of mean all the stuff outside the team, but an environment that allows the team to really excel and be highly productive. That's what we need the leaders for. And that's what it's so interesting for us to listen to this story. Furthermore, one of the things that we can for sure say about David is that he's been working in an environment that is traditionally very controlled, very strict. They have years and years of practice and been writing it down in checklists and guidelines and everything, and they're not that open to changes. And David kind of went in and wanted to change everything. So how do you do that in an organization that is very strict and very structured? I think that's something we can really learn about also. So having succeeded with this turnaround of his ship, David wrote his award-winning book, Turn the Ship Around. And I can see we still have a few left down there, so you can grab your copy before you leave. But let's listen to David's story.
Thank you very much. Imagine you're going on a cruise and you're taking your family, maybe your parents, maybe your spouse, maybe your children. You're going to go on a fabulous Mediterranean cruise, but you've chosen to go on the Costa Concordia. You chose poorly. And on the night of January 13th, the Costa Concordia struck a rock off an island off of Italy, lost all power, took on water, lost electrical power, and drifted to the shore. Some of the lifeboats were lowered, but not all of them. And some of the people got in those lifeboats and were carried to the shore. It's very dark, it's midnight, the water temperature is 46 degrees Fahrenheit. If you get in that water, you will live for about 25 minutes. You and your family were not among those that initially went to the shore. You're left on the ship. You're afraid. You're worried. You don't know what's going to happen next. That whole ship, 110,000-ton ship, is shifting as the tide is going out. And you don't know if it might capsize all the way over at some moment. Then you see a light from the direction of the port, and the light gets bigger. It's a lifeboat coming back. And this lifeboat comes back and picks up more people and goes to the shore. And all night, for the next 6 hours, this lifeboat runs back and forth and eventually picks up you and your family, and you're saved. And you meet the person who is driving this lifeboat. His name is Mr. Pedar Petrov. He grew up in Bulgaria. He was a good mechanic, so when the country gained its independence, he became a mechanic on a small cruise ship, and he worked his way up the lines, and now he's the lead mechanic on the Costa Concordia. And his job, should the ship run aground, is to operate a lifeboat. He has 3 children. And you ask him, Mr. Petrov, why did you leave the harbor, the safe place? You had done your job. You had driven your group of passengers ashore. You had done your job. And you, essentially alone, turned around and came back and rescued us. You don't even know us. Were you ordered to do that? No. The captain ran away. Right? And yet, Mr. Petrov left the safety of the harbor to come and bring his lifeboat into the lee of an unstable and listing ship to rescue people. It was an act of greatness so momentous that the European Commission awarded him the highest medal that they can award a member, a citizen of the European Union. And we think about these acts of greatness, and this characteristic sticks out to me. You cannot order acts of greatness. Be great. It doesn't work. And we have this idea that greatness is a serendipitous event. It's just luck. Oh, look, there's some greatness. I'll pick it up. And if it happens in my company, I'll take advantage of it. Hey, we had a great thing happen. Celebrate. But wouldn't it be really cool if, by the way we structured our companies, by the way we talked to each other, by the way we treated each other as people, by the environment that we set up, we actually nurtured acts of greatness. We created an environment where people came to work saying, today I'm going to do something great. Not, I hope I don't screw up today. Which is what most people think as they're driving to work. In America. The title of this conference is Ideas and Benefits. I think the benefit of Agile is the environment. The principles of Agile are the principles of the environment that we want to create that allows human beings to achieve greatness. The benefit of Agile is, faster, what do you call them, sprint cycles, and stand-up meetings, and better products, and all that kind of stuff. Yes. But the deep, true benefit of Agile that goes beyond all that is we create an environment where people can fulfill their desire to be great. It's a natural human desire. Humans don't want to go to work and say, oh, please tell me what to do. Oh, I screwed it up. I'll yell at you. They want to achieve something wonderful. It comes as part of being a human being. I don't have to convince people of that. All I need to do is get out of the way. That's what Agile does. So I'm going to talk about my nuclear submarine, and you're going to say, well, what's that have to do with coding and Agile and that kind of stuff? I think the connection is this. On the submarine, we were able to achieve greatness. We were able to achieve an environment where people strove for greatness, just like you're doing. And the connection is people. That's the connection. If you have people in your company, then this will be interesting to you. If you don't have any people in your company, I will show you the enemy, okay? The enemy is not, these are Canadian soldiers in World War I. The enemy is not the Germans over there, okay? That's not the enemy. This is the enemy. Now imagine you're this officer right here. Green button. Yeah, I'm not going to mess with it. I'm just going to point it up here, right? You're that person. You're that officer. You're in charge of these soldiers. And we're going to say, here's the deal. I'm going to blow a whistle in 30 seconds. And everybody put on their thinking caps and decide what you want to do. That's crazy. Who's going to jump out of a trench if they get to decide what they want to do? Not only do we not care that people think, we actually don't want them to think. And for 10,000 generations of human existence, that's what we wanted. We wanted people to do. We wanted people to execute. We wanted people to do what they're told. It was all about control. And when the whole industry of management was born, where did it come from? It came from the largest scale organizations at the time, which was the military. So he hired a bunch of generals and said, write down what you think about controlling people, and they were the first consultants. Now we have management. And we applied it to the railroads and General Motors, and the rest is history. This is the enemy. Oh, but Captain, that's 4 generations ago. We're much more enlightened now. All right, maybe now. This is 1981. I graduated from the United States Naval Academy. It's a school that prides itself on teaching young men and women about leadership. So here's my book. And here's what it says. Leadership can be defined as the art, science, or gift by which a person is enabled and privileged to direct the thoughts, plans, and actions of others in such a manner as to obtain and command their obedience, confidence, their respect, and their loyal cooperation. Simply stated, leadership is the art of accomplishing the Navy's mission through people. And for 18 years, I was an expert in this. I was one of the best naval officers you could see in this. And I kept getting promoted because I was really good at telling people what to do and controlling them. And now I think that's a terrible definition of leadership, because leadership is about people, right? So if you could take your definition of leadership, and a lot of companies and books have a definition of leadership, and I can replace the word, I go to Microsoft, replace all. Leadership with the word hydraulic pump, or people with hydraulic pump, right? We're here to accomplish the Navy's mission with hydraulic pumps. It's the same thing. It still works. If it still works, it's not a good definition about leadership. Leadership, this is accomplishment. Get stuff done. Yes, get stuff done is good. The test of the leader is not what happens while you're there. The test of the leader is what happens after you leave. Leadership is about embedding the brilliance, the genius, the creativity, if that's what you have, in your people. and in the practices of the organization so that it lives on without you. That's how you get people who are interested in greatness as opposed to just doing what they're told. It's all about controlling people, right? You guys, I really like this one. Direct the thoughts. Right? This is the, if you're not Obi-Wan Kenobi, these are not the droids you're looking for, trust me, you're not controlling anybody's thoughts. They may say, oh, boss, that's a great idea. Thought bubble, you're an idiot. I was really good at this. And I was ordered to take command of the USS Olympia. 360 feet long, one nuclear reactor, could stay at sea for months at a time, 135 men, armed with torpedoes, a very potent warship. And for a year, I studied everything about the USS Olympia. And I could draw from blank pieces of paper the piping systems, the fans, the pumps, the electrical circuits, the switches, all that. And I studied the people. I knew how many kids they had, whether they were married or not, where they went to school. And I studied all the problems that the ship, it's by accident that I'm pointing at you, all the problems that the ship had, right? Like they filed a report, we had a problem, and then here's what we did to fix it. The people problem and the piping systems, I was an expert. And when I anticipated being the captain of the USS Olympia, I said, that's good, because this is what I thought. If I know the ship well and I give good instructions, we'll have a good submarine. And if I know the ship very well and I give very good instructions, we'll have a very good submarine. And if I know the ship great and I give great instructions, we'll have a great submarine. But remember, you can't control your way to great. You can control your way to good. You can control your way to probably really good. But you can't control your way to great. Remember, right? Peter Petrov, you can't order people to be great. Doesn't work. The Navy changed the plan. And at the last minute, the Olympia was in Pearl Harbor, and the Santa Fe was another submarine in Pearl Harbor. The Santa Fe was the submarine we joked about. We laughed. Oh, those fools on the Santa Fe. It was the worst performing, worst morale, worst retention submarine in the United States Navy. They couldn't get underway on time. When they fixed something, they had to fix it again. The year before I went to the Santa Fe, they loved it so much that only 3 sailors of 135 decided to stay in the Navy. All the rest that could got out. And there's about a quarter of the crew each year that has the opportunity to get out. So about 30 guys left, and 3 guys said, oh yeah, I love this, I'll sign up for this some more. Well, the captain on the Santa Fe quit because he was not having a good time and the ship wasn't getting any better. And he was applying his leadership approach harder and harder and harder. His leadership approach was my leadership approach, right? Right? So the leadership approach is, I have to tell people what to do. I have to tell them more what to do. I'll tell them even more what to do. So on the submarine, we end up in a situation where people are just waiting to do what they're told. Now, a submarine is a pretty complex piece of equipment. Things are happening all around. And to be good, what you need is for people to be doing things all over the submarine. There's execution and doing, and there's decision making and thinking. And in general, everybody executes and does about the same. We run the same software, we go to the same schools, we have the same hierarchy, we have the same pay, we have the same ability to give bonuses, we have no money to take people out to dinner, and it's the same. Every submarine is the same. We go to the same school. We actually balance the load. So if one submarine seems to have a lot of talent, we'll put, when the next class graduates, we'll take the people from the bottom of the class and put them on that submarine. When this submarine has less talent, not that they're doing worse, but just they have less talent because of the scores of the officers, then we'll take the people from the top of the class and put them on that submarine. So they don't have access to the same talent, they actually have the same talent. And yet, some submarines get underway on time much better than others. Some submarines repair their equipment much better than others. Some submarines, when it comes to people, the differences are even more. Some submarines retain 10 times as many people, promote 10 times as many people. What could be the difference? So they said, hey, Marquet, we need a trained officer to go on the Santa Fe, someone who's been just through this pipeline. I was just about to take command of the Olympia. My parents were in the airplane flying to Hawaii for my change of command. It's a big celebration for a naval officer. And I said, not so fast. You're going to go to the Santa Fe. And I was petrified. Not necessarily because that was the worst performing, worst morale, worst retention submarine on the fleet. That was part of it. But the Santa Fe is a different class of submarine than the Olympia. The Santa Fe doesn't have fairwater planes like the Olympia has, so the underwater characteristics are a little bit different. The reactor plant in the Santa Fe is different than the Olympia. The Santa Fe has missile systems that the Olympia didn't have. And inside the submarine, every single piece of gear on board the Santa Fe was different than the Olympia's piece of gear. So on the Olympia, I could point to any button and ask the sailor, tell me what this does, and the sailor would know, because this is what captains did. We went to school, we knew everything, we asked questions, pretending to be curious. Oh, tell me what, and eventually the sailor would not know the answer. It wasn't fair because I'd been to school for a year. All I had to do was study. Well, you really should know what those buttons mean, and I'll tell you. I was being an ass. On the Santa Fe, I couldn't do that. My authority as a leader rested in the fact that I could know what I knew what needed to happen. I could go out and give those orders. But on Santa Fe, all that authority was just pulled out from under me. And so I went down on the submarine. But remember the enemy, right? We're trained to give instructions as human beings, and it's worse than just, you say, oh, well, that's the Naval Academy being screwed up. But as a human, you like it when you give orders and people do what you say. You like it when you get out of a limousine and people are, oh, métier people getting out of a limousine, going to a celebration dinner. Beautiful people. You like it. Chemicals trigger in your brain. Jenny's going to talk about this more. So, I gave orders. That's what I was trained to do. We got the submarine underway. Everything seemed to be going fine. And then something happened. What happened was I gave an order that didn't make any sense. I gave an order to run on we were running on a backup motor because we were practicing operating the ship with the reactor shut down. And we were going to run on the backup motor and speed up from 1/3 to 2/3, 1/3, 2/3 standard full flank. And I asked the officer deck, I said, why don't we speed up? Let's go ahead 2/3 on this backup motor. Every other submarine I'd been on had 2 speeds, 1/3, 2/3 on the backup motor. The officer deck orders it, helm ahead 2/3. Nothing happens. It's quiet just like this. And I can't really see the helmsman, and I kind of look off the side of the periscope, and he's facing away from me because he's facing his panel. He's the one driving the submarine. But I can see his shoulders are up like this. I pictured his face was kind of like this. I really couldn't see his face. And I said, Helm, what's going on? Now remember, this is the worst performing, worst retention, worst morale submarine in the Navy, and they've just said, hey, you go down there and fix it. So your idea is not to go down there and be a nice guy, right? We're going to knock some heads together and make this happen. And the helmsman says, Captain, there's no 2/3 on the EPM. Unlike every one of my other submarines, there was 1/3 and 2/3. On the Santa Fe, this newest submarine in the fleet, there was only this 1/3 setting. That was embarrassing. Now I'm going to go knock these guys' heads together and make sure, beat them up for not knowing what they need to know. And I don't, now it's been exposed, right? We all know the boss doesn't know the answers, but we try and pretend like they do. And so it's really problematic when we expose the emperor for having no clothes. So I was exposed. But really, what really bothered me was this person. So I went to the navigator. Now, the navigator's been on the submarine for 2 whole years. He's the senior, he's the longest served officer on the submarine. I say, Nav, we go to the corner of the control room. I said, psst, did you know about this 2/3 situation? And he's looked at me right in the eyes. And he says, yes, sir, I did. Why did you order it? Because you told me to. We train people to do what we're told, what they're told. Remember the picture. We train people for compliance. The better you are at doing what you're told, the better scores you're going to get in school, and the faster you're going to get promoted at work. And then we say, asterisk, fairy dusting, wishful thinking, but we really want you to think and let us know what you think. And if you don't agree with the decision, please let us know. Okay, so I'm in a big meeting, and the boss and the whole group we know we're going to move in a certain direction. We're going to bring on a new product, or buy a company, or sell a company, or fire someone. And then the boss says, right at the end, anyone have any issues with this? Oh yeah, I'm the idiot who's going to raise my hand. Not a team player, that guy. I'm like, oh, 3 months later, it's a disaster. Well, you were all here when we decided this, right? It's disingenuous, it's lies. So I realized at that moment that everything I knew about leadership, this 18 years of study, was wrong. Because that was about getting people to do what they're told. And what we needed on the Santa Fe was for people to think. And I think it's a seesaw now. The more you tell people what to do, the less they think. And to get people to think, you got to stop telling them what to do. And this is where I think Agile is brilliant. Now, I couldn't spell Scrum when I was the captain of the submarine, but now that I've learned a little bit about it, I think because it started with people thinking, right? Software coders, you can't control a software coder. I can control those soldiers because I wanted them to stand up, climb over a trench, and move. But you can't control a software coder. He's sitting behind a computer. So I'm going to stand behind him and say, oh, put a semicolon there. Oh, close brackets there. Oh, you missed something. First of all, they have no idea what coding is, okay? So that doesn't work. I got my officers together. I say, hey guys, I've discovered something. We have a problem. I'm trained for a different submarine, and you guys are trained to do what you're told. So eventually, something's going to come out of my mouth, like what happened 20 minutes ago, and you guys are just going to do it. Like, they already knew this. And what are we going to do? So we talked about it, and we talked about it, and we talked about it, and we came up with a bunch of ideas. And finally, one officer said, well, Captain, be quiet. What do you mean that's my instinct, was what do you mean be quiet? That's not what captains of submarines do. Haven't you seen like Russell Crowe and Sean Connery? You think they're quiet? They walk around, they give orders, they inspire confidence in their men. Helm, left full rudder, dive, make it at 400 feet. All ahead flank. And I thought about that. I said, you know what? You're right. So at that point, I vowed never to give another order. The only order would be the order to launch a weapon, okay? Because the weapon is going to kill people, and that had to rest with me, not on my people. But after that, so I went back up to the control room, and I said, here's the deal. I'm not giving any more orders. And all this, we had this permission-based world where if you wanted to submerge a ship, there were lists and lists and lists and lists and lists of things that the captain authorizes on a start. Submerge a ship, surface a ship, load a weapon, launch a weapon, preset a weapon, energize a weapon, start up the reactor, shut down the reactor, warm up the main engine, shift propulsion main engine, shift propulsion back to the EP, you know, pages. So I'm not doing any of that. But Captain, there's a violation of Navy regulations. I don't care. So what we're going to do, because we're going to die, so I'd rather violate Navy regs than die. So what we're going to do is you're going to say you intend to. Captain, I intend to submerge a ship. Very well. Now on the other submarines, and what we've done up to this point was, Captain, request permission to submerge a ship. Submerge a ship. Submerge a ship, aye. Now it might seem like a very small, nuanced change of language. But the difference is this. In this case, I'm quiet. I don't walk up the officer deck and say head 2/3 or submerge the ship. I'm owning the problem. I'm owning the action, right? And we all know organizations and people in societies where when we say, why did you do that horrible thing? What's the excuse? Well, I was following orders. The worst things we've done as human beings have been because we've been following orders. The greatest things we do as human beings have been accomplished without any orders. So it should be a no-brainer that if you want to achieve greatness, stop telling people what to do. The trick is, what's the environment? What are the things that need to be in place so I can stop telling people what to do, but they still move in the same direction? We get distributed decision-making with unity of effort. And technical competence is one of them. They have to know their job. So we've said, I intend to. We change the language. Right? I can't control these guys. They're going to type whatever they're going to type. You got to blow everything up. Everything I knew about leadership was about telling people what to do. Everything I knew about leadership was about controlling people. Everything I knew about leadership was attracting followers. It's in the movies, right? And if what you want to do is the opposite, instead of taking control, I want to give control. Instead of attracting followers, I want to create leaders. All this is irrelevant or bad. And your instincts, everything that's good is bad. And everything that's bad is now good. I'll give you an example. So here we are. This is a submarine. This is Santa Fe. We're tied up next to the tender, which is a big ship, in Sasebo, Japan. Remember, we operated out of Hawaii. So Japan's a country on the other side of the earth from here. And that green shape's a torpedo. And when we shoot torpedoes now, they don't actually hit the ships anymore. What they do is they go underneath the target. First of all, they trail a long wire behind them, miles and miles of wire. And the torpedo is telling me what it sees, and I can tell the torpedo, oh yeah, oh he's trying to get, oh yeah, turn left, turn right, speed up, slow down. And the torpedo runs underneath the enemy ship and blows up. And what happens is, basically it creates a bubble. It blows the water out from underneath the ship, and the ship falls down and breaks in half. It's an incredibly potent weapon. And you don't want to drop it when you're loading it. So we say, hey, we're gonna load this torpedo, and we're going to do a brief. You've seen these in the movies, I'm sure. You might even have suffered through one. So here's the brief. You're the forward port line handler. So the guy standing up there in the blue shirt and the blue hat. Your job, so we're going to load. So your job is, upon the signal from the crane operator, you will take a snug turn on the forward port line, and then blah, 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 blah. And an hour and a half later, if you haven't killed yourself, you want to. It's boring, right? Boring. Where's Tim? Boring, right? So what's the problem? A brief is passive. All you need to do is show up with your body. Oh, I came up. I was briefed. It's only active for the briefer. Does a brief help people think? No. So he canceled all the briefs. Now, this was really a cultural shock for people who came on board the Santa Fe to inspect me. Now, remember, the Santa Fe, right, is the worst performing ship. So if you're an inspector, where do you go to monitor? Right? You don't go to the good guy, because you're going to come back with like a short list, right? You go, oh, I'm going to go down to Santa Fe because I'm going to have a big list of deficiencies, and as an inspector, that's like lifetime employment. So we were a magnet for all the inspectors, and they all came down to the Santa Fe, and they say, Captain, we're here. And these guys were like captains and, you know, more senior. Captain, we're here to monitor the Santa Fe loading torpedoes. Great, have a ball. I want to watch the whole thing. Have, you know, whatever. So I want to see the brief and the evolution and then a debrief at the end. Good. Except I have to tell you one thing. We don't do briefs. You don't do briefs? Nah. Now, I was kind of playing a game with them because we replaced it with a thing called a certification. A certification, and we changed the word. Words are important. We changed the word. Certifications are different from briefs in two ways. One, the sailors tell us what their jobs are. Two, then you make a decision whether you're ready to do it or not. So think about it. Now when we get everybody together, we say, hey, you're the forward port line handler. We're about to load this torpedo. What's your job? I don't know. That's what happened the first time. Why? Because management hadn't done their job, right? For him to know what his job is, he needs to know that we're going to load a torpedo. And it's so much easier to say, oh, hey, show up tomorrow. I'll tell you what you're going to do. That's why this idea of articulating what we're doing publicly is so important. Secondly, what's secondly? I can't remember. You've heard my brief 3 times. Whatever. So that's important, okay? It's really important. Oh, here's the other thing. So then we say, oh, we're going to load a torpedo. But I thought I was going to be the guy in the torpedo room or the crane operator. So it's a burden on management. The burden on management gets higher. It's not easier, it's harder. And this is a big disconnect that a lot of people have. Oh, I'm just going to give control to my people. They're going to run around and do all the work, make all the decisions. I'm just going to sit back in my big office and have my secretary go down to Starbucks every 3 hours. It's going to be a good life. It doesn't work like that. But now, once you crack that nut, what happens? Here, picture this. 2 hours, 2 days, 2 weeks before this is happening, on the old Santa Fe, sailors were just sitting around. They were playing. We had these Game Boys, right? Everyone's playing with the Game Boys. You walk into the cruise master. Oh, shit. Now, no Game Boys. No one told them to put the Game Boys away because they felt accountable. They didn't feel accountable to me. They felt accountable to their teammates. Because if you go to this event and we say, what's your job? And this event takes 20 people. There's a few people on the tender. There's a bunch of people on deck. There's a bunch of people down in the torpedo room. And you have 20 people standing up ready to go. And you say, you know, sorry, I really didn't get to it. I don't really know what I'm going to do. And the person in charge says, you know what? We're not loading that torpedo today. We're all going to have to stay here tonight and do it. Right? That's accountability. That's accountable. People are not accountable to numbers. They're not accountable to spreadsheets. They're not accountable to some metric. They're not accountable to some poster that the CEO puts on the wall. They're accountable to other people. And the closer the people are to them, the more accountability they feel. I'm going to give you 2 frameworks. I think these frameworks can map into Agile frameworks, but I'm going to give them to you in a language that's not necessarily past the Agile final exam test. Framework number 1, change your language to move people up the ladder of control. What's the ladder of control? The ladder of control is the relationship between the subordinate and the superior in terms of how the decision is made. Many decisions, it's not like a light switch. You make the decision or I make the decision. It's a continuum. Now at the bottom, we have tell me what to do. And so it starts with awareness. And you can do a little exercise with your people and just say, hey, for a week, listen to how we talk to each other and sort of put little tick marks. And then we're going to meet next Friday and we're going to see where the tick marks are. Okay, then what's the next step? I think. I recommend. Request permission. So when we went from request permission to I intend to, we weren't going from the bottom to the top. We were just doing one rung. Don't try and go from here to here. That's crazy. Just do one. But even one, yeah, do one. That's our goal for this year. Go from here to here. Then next year we're going to go from here to here. It's a diet. It's not winning the lottery. There's no lottery in life. Here, go from here to here. They will make stupendous changes. Tell me what to do is disguised in a lot of different ways. For example, the checklist, okay, the to-do list, where I keep a list of what you have to do, and you keep a list of what he has to do, and he keeps a list of what Arya has to do. Those, right? What is that? That's tell me what to do. So we literally got rid of all those on the submarine. It was scary because now I didn't have a list of what the person underneath me was supposed to do. But think how liberating that is when you're in management and now you know, not like it's a secret and your boss is pretending not to know what your job is. He or she is actually not keeping track of what you're doing. So I go to a company and they say, I have a problem. Not your company, sorry. I have a problem. My people aren't taking ownership of their jobs. Well, tell me about that, Mr. CEO. Well, I have these, look, let me show you. There's all these things that they're supposed to be doing. Well, whose list is this? Well, that's my list. Well, it looks to me like you own their job. What? How can they own their job if you have the list of things that they're supposed to do? So we literally got rid of these lists. And again, the inspectors, we had fun with the inspectors because when the inspectors came down on the submarine, they wanted to go for these lists. Because the list would say, then they would say, hey, there's a thing's not checked here. You were supposed to send a message when there was a lot of these chairs that lot number XYZ to XYZ that had bad bumpers and you were supposed to return them. And I see you didn't do that. So it was really easy for the inspectors. So the inspectors would come down. Now the list isn't required, just doing the things. So they would come on Santa Fe and say, show us your checklist, your to-do list. So I don't have any. How can you not have a checklist? They say, well, they just do their job. Well, we'll see about that. And you know what? They did their jobs better than any other submarine. And we had an inspection a year, not 10 years, but 1 year after I got on board the submarine. And the crew on the Santa Fe got the highest score that the inspection team had ever seen. Not that year, not that month, not in the Pacific, not in the Atlantic, ever seen anywhere. Why? Because in the old way, I had one person thinking, one leader, and 134 doers. On the Santa Fe, we had 135 active thinking, doing, passionate, creative people coming up with ideas. I don't care how smart you are, and I don't care how smart you are in business. If that's the way you're running things, you're going to get washed away like a tidal wave because you can't be better than 135 people. I want to say a word about language. Oh, I only have 5 minutes left. Darn. Language is important. Okay, let me give you an example. I'm going to pick this middle one. Think out loud is great. It's an agile thing. You can read about it in the book. No day on Santa Fe. I'm walking around the submarine, and I walk into the engine room, and I know we need to get underway tomorrow, and we need this pump fixed before we can get underway. And the pump's sitting on the deck. And it's not, there's no people around it, none of this, no clanking of wrenches, none of the good noises that you like to hear as a captain of a submarine. So I go and I find the chief who's in charge of this pump. I say, Chief, yeah, in a submarine, you basically can go into people's bedrooms and wake them up. You wake them up. Chief, what's going on? He says, okay, they ordered the wrong part. Who's they? Like there was a lot of they on Santa Fe. There was like the engineers called supply people they, and the officers called the enlisted people they, and the chiefs called the blue shirts they, and everyone. I was the biggest they. I was always like they, they won't let you do that. Like, who's that? You. So I just blurted this thing out. I was pissed off. There's no they on Santa Fe. And it rhymed, so it was catchy, so we stuck with it. And so we told people you can't use the word they when you talk to anybody on the Santa Fe. I never gave a speech, everyone should be acting like a team. I never gave a speech about being a team. Never. Not once. And people came on to Santa Fe 6 months later and they would say, this is an amazing culture of teamwork. And I say, we don't have a culture of teamwork. What we have is a rule. that you can't say they with Santa Fe, on board Santa Fe. Framework 2, everyone's got a gap between the information and the authority. The people on the edge of your organization have the information. They know what's going on. But they don't have the authority, so they have to fill out a form or put in some, stoplight chart or whatever, get mother may I from the boss. And 3 months later, we get a decision to move forward with the Nokia interface. Guess what? We don't care anymore. This is the wrong approach to this problem. The correct approach is to push the authority to where the information lives. And again, what do you need to have in place to make that happen? So we do an exercise. We say, imagine a decision, or remember a decision you made last week, and picture one of your subordinates. What if they could make that decision? We talked about project owners can't make decisions, right? Or they didn't have the authority to make decisions. And so the drill is, now just sort of picture that, and then write down on a card every reason that you can't sleep. And then we'll take all these cards and we'll look at what's in them. And it tends to be a big pile of they don't understand their job, and the other big pile is they just don't understand what we're trying to do here at Nordea, right? They just, they don't get it. Okay, IBM, something happened last week. You can look it up in the news. Legos, look, okay, when you're the captain of a nuclear power submarine, there's a bunch of things that you don't want to hear. Hey, Captain, we had a new idea for starting up the reactor last night. Let's tell you how it went. That's one of them. Okay, you all have Legos. Even coders have, you're like coding an iOS. You're not like, oh yeah, I'm just going to make it different. No, don't break the Legos, but know where your Legos are. Be very clear. The creativity goes into what you do with the Legos. Don't let your people waste energy on breaking Legos. How you assemble the Legos is what you want your people to spend their energy and their prefrontal cortexes on. Now I'm going to tell you a secret. Nothing about this is hard. And nothing about this for the people higher in the organization that you're trying to convince give you the authority to move agile and expand it from just a few geeks in the basement to the whole organization. Nothing is physically hard. But the problem is always you. The problem rests in here because it feels uncomfortable. Because I feel like I'm losing control by giving control. And that's going to be always the problem. It's the number one problem. And when you think about it, I suggest you think about Mr. Petrov. And if he could move out of the safety of the harbor and go achieve greatness, then I think we can probably move out of the safety of our comfort zone and our emotional zone and achieve greatness not by doing something that results in our name and lights, but by setting an environment so that the people around us have the ability to think, create, be passionate human beings like we were all meant to be. Thank you very much.